Susan, what are you doing? As we came back from shopping, what we saw was a moving truck stopped in front of our house, along with my in-laws. Glancing at me in surprise, my mother-in-law then continued giving directions to the movers. Please don't just barge into our house on your own accord. Don't get sassy with me, young lady. Hurry up and open the door. Saying this, my father-in-law reached for my purse. In a panic, I clutched my bag and stepped back. Seeing me like this, my mother-in-law continued with a sinister laugh. Strangers, please leave right now. Dumbfounded by my mother-in-law's words, I was left speechless. However, Tom, having heard all of this, changed his complexion and began to tremble violently. Do you not know who you're talking to, Mom? What are you talking about? I thought that this was the right time to tell the truth. With that thought, I decided to reveal the truth to my enraged mother-in-law. My name is Christy Grubb. I'm 48 years old, and I run an insurance agency. I took over the business from my father. I'm someone who likes to have everything neatly organized. And this job, where I can introduce insurance that suits our clients' needs, suits me perfectly. Since my father's time, we have continued to have good relationships with old acquaintances, and thankfully, business has been booming. I met my husband, Tom, when I was 30 at a work event. A client, a longtime friend of my father, introduced us, suggesting we grab a coffee sometime. Tom was 2 years older than me, a very calm and refined man. Apparently, he had just broken up with a long-term girlfriend who had cheated on him. We hit it off after just a little conversation, and soon after, we started exchanging contact information. It didn't take long for us to start going out together. At that time, my mother wasn't in good health, and I wanted to fulfill her wish to see me in a wedding dress. So I was actively seeking a marriage partner. I think I was in a bit of a rush to get married. On the other hand, Tom wasn't as keen on getting married. Nevertheless, he respected my feelings, and half a year after we met, he proposed to me. I happily accepted, crying and saying, "Please take care of me." After that, things moved quickly. We visited each other's parents and had a small, family-only wedding ceremony. My mother looked so happy as she saw me in my wedding dress, and she peacefully passed away the following month. It was thanks to Tom that I could fulfill my mother's last wish. I decided to cherish Tom, who had stayed by my side and held my hand even at my mother's funeral, for the rest of my life. Even after 5 years of marriage, Tom and I hadn't been able to have children. Both of us believed that children are a gift from heaven, so we didn't feel rushed, but my in-laws were the ones who brought it up. It happened when we went to greet them for New Year's. Tom was reluctant to go, but we ended up going because my mother-in-law contacted me directly and asked if we were coming. "No child yet? When are you going to give me a grandchild?" My mother-in-law asked. "Mom, we've told you, we're leaving it up to nature," I replied. "If you're going to talk like that, we're leaving." "I understand that, but maybe the field is barren," my mother-in-law said, rudely referring to my wife, Christy. "Christy, I'm sorry. Let's go." Right at the doorstep, my in-laws suddenly brought up the topic of grandchildren. We left their house even before we could exchange New Year's greetings. I was the one who had convinced Tom to go. And yet, as soon as we got back to the car, Tom apologized to me. "I'm really sorry for making you feel uncomfortable," he said. "I'm totally fine." "I'm sorry for making you feel bad, Tom," I replied. "It's fine for me. They are my parents, after all. But now my family is Christy. If anyone, even my parents, hurts Christy, I'm ready to cut ties with them. But it's okay," I added. "We never really saw eye to eye from the beginning. Even without the issues about Christy, we grew distant as adults." Tom said with a look of loneliness evident on his face. All I could do was reply with a quiet, "Yeah." Since then, Tom made it a point to distance me from his in-laws and even moved to a new place. They tried reaching out multiple times, asking for our address, but Tom ignored all their calls. For the next 13 years or so, I had little to no contact with my in-laws, except during family events like weddings or funerals. By the time we hit our 40s, they stopped bringing up the topic of grandchildren, which was a slight relief. However, one day, out of the blue, they found our place and paid us a surprise visit. It so happened that Tom was out with a friend that day. Knowing I was alone, Mike and Susan, my in-laws, barged into our home, nosily rummaging through our stuff. "Goodness, You two still share the same bed at your age? How scandalous, Susan exclaimed, making a rude comment about our marriage. Christy, with these kind of undergarments, don't you think Tom won't be excited? Ignoring my disgusted expression at their remarks, they continued to snoop around our home, making snide comments every now and then. This is probably why you guys don't have any grandkids for us, my mother-in-law said, trying to justify their behavior. Now, dear, there's still hope, Susan exclaimed, shoving a crumpled newspaper article into my hands. The article was about a woman who gave birth at 60, implying that there was still a chance for us to have children. Realizing their implications, I felt chills down my spine. We've been too lenient on you. Even at your age, you can still have kids, right? You might as well move in with us. And home. Do we have guests? In the midst of Susan's rant, my dad arrived. Little did they know, Tom and I had been living with my father since we moved. Tom really cared for my dad, and my dad treated Tom just like his own son. Seeing my dad, they looked shocked. You're having Tom support your own father too? Normally, one would first show gratitude to their husband's parents. I was at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond to Mike and Susan's entitled behavior. We're always grateful for your kindness. I really didn't expect to see Christy's entitled behavior. We're always grateful for your kindness. I really didn't expect to see Christy's father here. Isn't it a blow to your pride relying on my son? Well, you know, my dad replied with a vague smile. It seemed they didn't like his response as they looked visibly irritated. Man, how did you even find this place? Tom, who returned earlier due to his friend not feeling well, stormed in with a furious expression. Seeing Tom's anger, Susan replied nonchalantly. You never told us, so we hired a detective. It was pretty pricey. You'll pay for it, right? No way in hell, I'm gonna pay for that. As Tom said that, he stomped over to Susan, grabbed her by the clothes, then forced her to stand up. He dragged her out of the room against her will, causing her to let out a piercing scream. Pray, that hurts. What are you doing, Tom? You're hurting your mother. Stop it right now. Susan's screams were followed by a loud shout from Mike echoing through the room. However, Tom didn't care and continued to drag Susan all the way to the entrance, then pushed her out of the house. Don't ever come back here? I'm even considering cutting ties with you guys. Oh my, is this Christy's doing? What kind of wife have you married? It has nothing to do with Christy. I've made up my mind. Get lost. Though Susan still tried to protest once Tom threatened to call the police, they reluctantly left. After confirming it, Tom apologized to me and my father. I'm really sorry. I can't believe they went as far as hiring a detective to search for us. They've been incredibly rude. No, Tom, it's not your fault. But I know very well that you're a good kid. Come on, let's eat together. Thank you. Tom, with tears in his eyes, thanked my father repeatedly. And that night, the three of us had a pleasant dinner. We had a pleasant dinner together. After discussing it, we decided not to move and to call the police if they showed up again. Surprisingly, we thought my in-laws would come back the next day, but weeks passed without seeing their faces, and we thought we could continue our quiet life. A month after my father passed away, Tom and I went on a trip to buy some memorabilia of my father. On the way back, I couldn't help but scream out, "What are you doing, Susan?" What we saw on our way back from shopping were movers and my in-laws in front of our house. Susan glanced at me, surprised, and then continued to give instructions to the movers. Don't just enter the house without permission, please, I said, trying to remain calm. Don't talk back to me, young lady. Just open the door, Susan replied with a sinister smile. Panicking, I hugged my bag tightly and stepped back. Susan, please, outsiders should leave immediately, I pleaded. But she ignored me and continued speaking. I was so stunned by her words that I couldn't respond. However, Tom, who had heard all this, was trembling with anger, his face turning red. Do you not know who you're talking to, Mom? Tom asked, his voice shaking with rage. What are you talking about? I finally found the courage to speak up. This is my house, you know? Tom didn't buy it, I did. My mother-in-law, Susan, stared at me with a confused and accusatory look. When I looked at Tom, he sighed deeply and began to speak. This is genuinely Christy's house. I'm just living here with her permission. Susan's accusations were getting out of hand. Tom, is Christy blackmailing you? She asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Poor thing. You don't have to tell such obvious lies. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Besides, Christy is not just a housewife, she runs an insurance agency, Tom said, defending me. What? Tom's eyebrows shot up in response to Susan's words. He was probably angry that she implied I was the kind of woman who would manipulate and hurt him by holding something over him. But the main reason was probably because she called me a housewife. What do you mean Christy is a housewife? Tom asked, his tone filled with disbelief. Christy runs an insurance agency, you know? I explained, feeling frustrated. What are you talking about? She's always at home, and yet she goes out to spas and whatnot. Just the other day, she was dining at a fancy restaurant with some unknown man. Disgusting. The unknown man Susan was talking about must have been my client. I was invited to a hotel lunch recently by someone who used to be a client of my father's to talk about old times. Tom was also invited, but he had work that day, so in the end it was just the two of us. Of course, it was also a business meeting to discuss new insurance policies, so it wasn't purely private, and Tom had agreed to it. She had agreed to it. If she had hired a detective, she should have known that I went straight home alone right after lunch. Despite this, she came to a conclusion, which probably meant she really wanted to break Tom and me up. That person is an acquaintance of mine and first and foremost a client of Christie's. I just couldn't go that day because I had work, but we do dine together occasionally. Tom, you're being deceived. It's not too late. You can marry a younger woman and have grandchildren. I would hate to marry anyone other than Christy. And besides, I can't have kids with anyone else anyway. What? What do you mean? At Tom's shout, not just Susan, but also my father-in-law Mike looked dumbfounded. And I was also frozen in place, not understanding the situation. Neither Tom nor I had undergone fertility tests. That was because Tom said that if one of us was found to have an issue, we would end up blaming ourselves, so we decided against it. A few years ago, when I had a high fever, the doctor recommended that I get tested. So I secretly went and got checked out, and it turns out I was born infertile. But I thought that if I told you, Christy, you might leave me. Just because you can't have kids doesn't mean I would ever leave you. Yeah, I know, but I couldn't help feeling insecure. At Tom's words, I instinctively hugged him. And Tom hugged me back? I was filled with the resolve to cherish Tom forever. What do you mean you can't have kids? You were a defective product all along. Is this a joke? Have you been deceiving us all this time? My in-laws, Susan and Mike, seemed to have completely forgotten about me and started berating Tom. Tom looked back at them with cold eyes. I've told you guys time and time again that I'm not your toy. To call your own son a defective product, that's not something parents should do. What's wrong with calling a defective product a defective product? Susan was enraged by Tom's words and grabbed him by the chest with both hands, approaching him threateningly. Then Tom whispered a man's name softly. Hearing that name, Susan's face turned pale and she backed away from Tom. Who is that? Who knows? With a confused look on his face, Mike and a suddenly flustered Susan listened as Tom calmly answered. That's the name of my biological father. What are you talking about? Your father is me, isn't it? I didn't know until recently either. Remember when you guys hired a detective to follow me? Well, I hired one too. And I found out a lot of interesting things. Saying this, Tom showed the screen of his smartphone to Mike. Susan's face was as white as a sheet. And then, looking at the screen of the smartphone, Mike's face turned bright red as he began to tremble. You? Were you cheating on me? Does that mean this guy is Tom's father, and you've been cheating for 50 years? That's not it. What do you mean that's not it? You dare deny it when you were hugging each other. Ignoring my in-laws who started bickering loudly, Tom and I asked the moving company to relocate our stuff to a storage unit nearby. We were told there would be an extra charge, but since my in-laws would be paying, and they started this whole mess in the first place, it only seemed fair to make them shoulder the burden. So I've been raising another man's son, huh? I'm horrified at the thought of spending money on a defective product who isn't even related to me by blood. Tom, you better take responsibility and support me. Got it? No way. What? You have an obligation to support me. My father-in-law then lunged at Tom. But Tom easily pulled away, flashing a smile. The only one who needs to take responsibility is Mom. I was just born, that's all. Besides, you guys didn't even pay for my high school and college expenses. I've been living on my own since high school. You? How can you say that? While I was desperately earning tuition money, unable to hang out with friends, you were stealing my part-time job money. What more do you expect me to say to such a father? That's when I finally understood why Tom particularly disliked his father. However, his father simply acted as if it was all justified. A child's money is the parent's money. And so is the child's spouse's money. But we're not related by blood. On paper only. If you really want to cut ties, then return all the money we spent on you. I already did. I've been sending money back every month. Sending money? I knew that Tom had been sending money to his parents' house. He even sent more than what they asked for, just to keep them from getting involved with us. However, his father seemed genuinely unaware of the money. See, I've been transferring money every month. $1,500 every month. Hey, what's going on? I get it. Mom has been using all my money for herself and her lover. What? Susan could only fidget as her husband approached her and slapped her across the face. Initially shocked, she soon glared at him and screeched, "How dare you! You should be grateful that a man with no money or status could marry me." He's a man with both money and status. Staying married to you was just convenient for enjoying life with him. I even let you raise his child, didn't I? Be thankful. Are you kidding me? You said you were pregnant, so I married you even though your father beat me up. So what? It would have been pitiful if he got beaten up. The father-in-law was speechless at Susan's sudden and drastic change in attitude. Just then, Susan's smartphone began ringing loudly. She checked it, her face lighting up as she answered in a sweet, coquettish voice. "Hello? Darling, what's up? Missed me?" I shuddered at hearing Susan's voice for the first time. Tom, standing beside me, had a twisted expression, though he was smiling. I would soon come to understand the meaning behind that smile. "Wait, you're not Darling?" "Ma'am? What? Oh no, this is a mistake, or rather, all of it." $10 million? Wait, please hold on a moment. Susan was frantically speaking into the phone, but it seemed like she was forcefully cut off and left in a daze. Tom started chuckling. All the evidence, photos, and recordings must have reached them. "What? This is your fault. It's called sharing information. Oh, and by the way, she has no intention of divorcing your boyfriend. He's a son-in-law in her family, after all. Tough times ahead for you." "A son-in-law? You didn't even know that?" "Well, it seems like he's keeping a number of mistresses. He was told by his wife to only cheat with younger women, right? You must be getting an earful right about now. Mistresses, but he said he loved only me." Stunned by these shocking truths, Susan slumped to the ground. Mike looked down at her with satisfaction, then suddenly turned to Tom with a thought. It must have been tough having such a mother. "All right, I'll let bygones be bygones this time. Let's live together, just the three of us. Cut ties with your mother and it'll be you, me, and Christy." "Christy, I'll wash you back for you." "Stay away from Christy." Unfazed by Tom's words, Mike approached me. As soon as his hand landed on my shoulder, I grabbed it and threw him to the ground. "Oath! What the—" Surprised and confused, Mike didn't understand what had just happened. I looked down at him with a cold gaze. In fact, I had been attending self-defense classes since I was young. Though my job in insurance involved dealing with companies, there were still good and bad encounters depending on the client. I started learning self-defense so I could escape if I ever found myself in a dangerous situation. I found myself in a dubious situation as it was one of the conditions my father had set for me to take over the company. Gradually, I started enjoying the classes and kept attending them, even after taking over the business. I wondered if I had gone too far with a 75-year-old man like Mike, but seeing Tom looking satisfied as he looked down at his father, I felt a bit relieved. Mike seemed too shocked to speak, but then Susan, my mother-in-law, started talking to me. "Christy, that was impressive. I'm sure you can handle anything. How about this? Why don't you pay the alimony to that woman for me? If we live together, we could save on living expenses, and I can help with the household chores. And about kids, we could always adopt. I'd take good care of them. Are you kidding me? There's no way I'm letting a woman like you into my precious house filled with memories of me, Tom, and my father. And why should I be the one to pay the alimony? You should pay it yourself. It seemed I had thrown away any semblance of politeness, along with Mike, as I found myself saying everything I had been thinking directly to Susan. She was taken aback at first, having never been spoken to like that before, but her face quickly turned red as she started yelling again. How dare you talk to your husband's mother like that? I've already told the neighbors we'd be moving in, and besides, that house is already being demolished. That's right, I don't have a house to live in anymore. So forget about her, let me stay. What are you saying? I'm his mother, he should be living with me. Mike, responding to Susan's words, stood up from the ground and shouted back, while Susan argued fervently. Amidst their quarrel, Tom calmly and seriously communicated our intentions. Neither of you will be living with us. We've decided to cut ties completely. If you continue to make a scene here, we will call the police. The police? At the mention of the police, my in-laws' faces went pale, and they backed away. Then, still arguing, they disappeared towards the train station. Later on, Mike and Susan got a divorce. However, since neither of them had any money, they ended up living together again. Mike tried to claim alimony from Susan and her lover, but it was offset by a claim from the lover's wife. Susan, having never worked long hours in her life, found it difficult to hold down a job. She would quit at the slightest inconvenience, and she was already struggling with daily expenses. Mike was in a similar situation, and they were just barely getting by with their combined incomes. The lover, on the other hand, was squeezed dry. He lost his rights as the next company president and is now confined to his house. His wife couldn't easily forgive a 50-year affair, and I heard she intends to take him for all he's worth. I thought Tom would be down after such an incident, but surprisingly, he seems to have gotten over it quickly and is doing well. Apparently, the lover's family approached him, suggesting that since he shares blood with the lover, he could become their heir. However, Tom, not a fan of competition and not particularly greedy, simply said, "That's too much for me to handle," and went to sign the paperwork to renounce the inheritance. While I feel a bit disappointed, it's so like Tom, and I'm happy about it. As for me, a business associate recently asked me if I wanted to adopt a cat they had found, and I'm currently excitedly looking up cat towers. I've already decided on a name, Marine. It's a tribute to the frequent fishing trips my father and Tom used to go on, and the cat's eyes are as blue as the sea. Even Tom seems to be in high spirits, eagerly anticipating the arrival of our new family member. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of my business associate. Well, time to meet our new family member. Excitedly, I opened the door and greeted them. Welcome. Can you lend me $5? I haven't eaten in 3 days. I was stunned by my mom's words. What on earth was going on? I didn't understand. I'm absolutely not lending you anything. John, standing next to me, was shaking with anger, his eyes wide open. You're saying you can't lend her a mere $5 even when she hasn't eaten? John snapped back to reality after hearing my words, and his usual calm expression returned. I'm sorry. What I meant was that I won't be helping Tom with money anymore. I can understand where John is coming from. He probably thought that it wouldn't be surprising if Tom was using our mom to get money. My name is Amy. I'm a 55-year-old stay-at-home wife. I live with my husband John, who is 5 years older than me. Both our kids are grown up and moved out after getting jobs. It's a bit lonely, but John and I are enjoying a relaxed life since our parenting days are over. John is a man of few words, but he's kind and gentle. I've never seen him raise his voice. After retiring at 60, John was rehired by the company he worked for and commutes there about 3 days a week. Back at my parents' place, both my mom and dad live together. John has an older brother, Tom, who is 3 years his senior. Unlike John, Tom tends to speak his mind immediately and often gets emotional. They're polar opposites in personality. My mom's hobby was listening to stand-up comedy on a small cassette player. She had a bunch of these comedy tapes, and I remember her laughing at them since I was a kid. Dad. Dad was as gentle as Mom. I barely remember him getting angry. Back in the day, he worked at a fancy restaurant and was a great cook. He often taught me his recipes. My dad loved to skillfully roast a turkey and serve it to everyone when the family gathered for occasions like Thanksgiving. I remember Tom looking at him with admiration, thinking he was so cool. Dad often made dinner during the weekdays. As Mom and I sat at the living room table, sipping on tea and waiting for dinner, she would say with a smile, "It's funny. What? Dad's the one bustling in the kitchen, while I just relax here." Seeing her happy face, I always thought I would want a marriage like that when I got older. But after a while, Dad passed away. He looked healthy, but he had cancer. Once it got worse, everything happened so quickly, and I guess Mom didn't even have time to grieve. For a while, she became like a hollow shell, often zoning out. I was worried she would fall sick from the stress, but my kids kept visiting and cheering her up. Thanks to that, she regained her spirit and was able to smile and live like before. Around that time, Tom decided to quit his job and open a bar. I wondered if he was influenced by my father, who had been a chef. Tom was impressionable. He probably thought my dad's cooking skills were awesome. Despite the economy not being so great, Tom was determined to start his own business, even though most of the family objected. Even John was against it. They thought Tom was too selfish and arrogant. If he went independent, they were sure he would fail. I too doubted Tom, who was all show and no substance. He poured his savings into it, even mortgaged his apartment and started his bar, but his arrogant nature got the better of him. Soon customers stopped coming, and within a year, he had to close down. Relations within his family became strained as his business went downhill, and when he closed shop, his wife left with their kids. All Tom was left with was a mountain of debt. Having nowhere else to go, he turned to my family home. While everyone blamed Tom, only my mother was kind to him. She told Tom, "If you have nowhere to stay, just live here." I was more worried than opposed to the idea. I could easily imagine Tom taking advantage of Mom's kindness. John shared my concerns, but Tom, seeing an opportunity, moved in quickly. Little did we know, this kindness would come back to haunt us. Tom started living at my parents' house, mooching off my mother, and spending his days lazing around without any particular purpose. Whenever I went to visit my mother, he was often sprawled on the couch with a beer in one hand. In his other hand, he typically held a horse racing newspaper. Seemed like Tom seemed to be taking full advantage of living at my family's home. After a while of staying there, Tom got remarried. He got married without consulting or even notifying us beforehand, and started living with my mom at the family home. His new wife, named Blair, was 9 years younger than him, and stood out with her flashy makeup and long nails. I've met her once, and she has a loud voice and doesn't hesitate to speak her mind. I was concerned about whether Blair, with her strong-willed personality, would get along with my mom. Blair used to work at Tom's favorite bar, and they bonded over their shared interest in horse racing. Tom would say, "She teaches me how to enjoy life." However, Tom's idea of enjoying life wasn't the most reputable. One day, surprisingly, Tom and Blair came over to our place. Apparently, they were looking for jobs but had no luck, and they asked for some financial support until they found one. "Can you help us out financially until I find the next job?" Just for a while, Tom asked, leaning back on the couch and crossing his legs, his tone casual and demanding. I couldn't tell if Tom was genuinely in need or just being arrogant with his request. I've been thinking of starting a part-time job too, but I can't find one. While Blair's words seemed earnest, I had a feeling there was more to the story. Especially since she had an expensive-looking designer bag with her. It's true that Tom lost everything due to a failed business venture. All right, we'll help out. But please make sure to find a job soon. John, likely having his own concerns, decided to support Tom, his only brother. Like John, I too felt compelled to support Tom. We decided to give Tom and Blair $2,000 every month for their living expenses. It was money we had saved up for our retirement, but we handed it over without mentioning this. I believed this tough situation wouldn't last long. They'd find jobs, and we wouldn't need to give them money anymore. They might even start repaying us. Looking back now, I realize I was probably too optimistic. Before we knew it, a year had passed since then, and we hadn't heard a peep from Tom and Blair. Fed up with Tom's lack of communication, we decided to pay a visit to their home. Even after ringing the doorbell, there was no response for a while. Finally, Blair answered, but only via the intercom, and made no move to open the front door. "Look, it's really inconvenient when you show up out of the blue. At least give us a heads up. It's just common courtesy," she snapped in a harsh tone without opening the door. Even when I insisted, asking her to let us in, she wouldn't budge. "We're busy right now," she firmly repeated this single excuse. That day, we eventually gave in to Blair's resistance and turned back. My main concern wasn't the money. It was about my mom. I'd come to regret not being more persistent and getting into the house that day. A few days after visiting the house, something shocking happened. That day there was a storm, with heavy rain and gusting winds outside. John and I decided to stay inside, closing the storm shutters early. Late into the night, as I was dozing off under my blanket, startled by the rain and wind battering the shutters, the doorbell rang repeatedly. Wondering what was happening, I woke up John to check things out. Looking at the doorbell camera, I was stunned to see my drenched mother. "Help me, Amy," my mother pleaded through the intercom. John and I rushed to the front door and opened it. Standing there was my mother, soaked from the rain, her hair a mess from the gusty winds and leaves and grass stuck all over her. Moreover, she was wearing sandals and her feet were covered in cuts. "Can you lend me $5? I haven't eaten in 3 days," my mother's words stunned me. What on earth was going on? I just didn't get it. "I'm not giving you a dime!" John exclaimed, trembling with anger and wide-eyed. I was taken aback by the strength of John's refusal. Even my mother seemed to shrink back from his vehement tone, looking like she might collapse. I had never seen John yell or get so angry. I couldn't hold back and retorted to John, "How can you not lend just $5 knowing she hasn't eaten?" John suddenly seemed to snap back to himself at my words, his face regaining its usual calm expression. With tears in his eyes and a sad expression, he let my mother into the house. "I'm sorry for raising my voice," my mother, still a bit confused, entered the house. For now, we had her sit on the living room couch. Considering she could catch a cold, I handed her a towel. I took another look at my mother. She had become thin and frail, and her once abundant hair had thinned out considerably. Her fingertips looked skeletal. What on earth had happened to her? I was filled with questions. John gently spoke to my mother in a soft tone. "I'm sorry for earlier. What I meant was I'm not helping out with money for Tom anymore." I could understand where John was coming from. He probably thought it wouldn't be a surprise if Tom was taking advantage of my mother. But right now, my main concern was her. "Mom, are you okay?" She remained silent, looking down. "Would you like to stay here with us for a while?" She continued to remain silent. "Did Tom say something to you?" After a long pause, during which she intently looked into John's eyes, she began to speak slowly. "But you both are annoyed by me, right? You hate me." Confused by her words, John and I exchanged glances. Why would she think like that? Still gazing at us sternly, she continued. "Amy and John, you both started to hate me. I heard it from Tom." "What are you talking about?" "There's no way that's true." I couldn't help but retort. I could never hate my beloved mother. Tears began to spill from her eyes and she started to sob. "I've always loved you, Mom. I could never hate you. I've missed you so much." Unable to contain myself, I embraced my mother. She hugged me back and we both began crying loudly. My mother began to recount the harrowing events that had befallen her. There was a time when my mother, murmuring that she wanted to see me, tried to leave the house in the middle of the night, like she was sleepwalking. Since then, she was tied to the bed by her hands and feet, unable to move. She wasn't even allowed to go to the bathroom, and diapers were placed by her bedside. The only times her restraints were removed were for meals and when she was made to clean the house. She was fed only a slice of bread and was allowed to eat just twice a day. And every chance they got, Tom and Blair would spread rumors and lies about John and me. They claimed that John and I had abandoned my mother, They told my mother that we had always loved her, and a litany of other falsehoods. Tom and Blair left the house with my mother still tied up and did not return. Because of this, my mother was left without food for 3 days. Bound as she was, she couldn't take a bath or use the restroom. She had to make do with the diapers placed by her bed. Believing her life was in danger, she somehow managed to free herself and escape from the house. Listening to my mother's distressing account, John and I were left aghast. It was beyond cruel, unthinkable for any human being to do. Were Tom and Blair some kind of demons? Regardless, my heart ached for my mother. It would take anyone an hour to walk from there, but with her weakened state, how many hours did it take her? And to make matters worse, the weather outside was stormy, with rain beating down hard. What must she have felt making her way here? The thought of it brought tears to my eyes, which I couldn't hold back. It's all right now. From now on, we'll protect you. Upon hearing these words, my mother repeatedly nodded, perhaps out of relief. What were Tom and Blair telling me then? To be frank, it was all lies. My mother looked taken aback. She was someone who inherently trusted people. She had never experienced such cruelty before. I have experienced such malevolent acts before. All these revelations must have been a shock to her. Tom probably relied on having a place to live and aimed for her pension. But don't worry, we'll keep you safe. We promise. With those words, a smile of relief spread across my mother's face. I decided to prepare a comforting dish of tomato soup with chicken, a favorite of my father's. As she sipped it, she murmured, "This brings back memories." While savoring every mouthful, tears welled up in John's eyes as he looked at my mother and muttered to himself, "I'll never forgive them for what they did." When I asked Mom in detail about where Tom and Blair might be, she said they went to Chicago for some horse racing. Upon checking, the big race is tomorrow, so they'll probably be back sometime after that. John and I began planning our countermove. The next morning, I served my mother more of my father's favorite dishes. Her appetite had waned, but she relished every bite, remarking, "It's been so long since I had something this delicious." Seeing her eat with a smile, a pang of sorrow surged through me. How could someone as kind and trusting as my mother have been subjected to such cruelty? After finishing her meal, my mother began to speak quietly. She said she didn't like my demeanor, claiming I act too prim and proper. I was taken aback. How could someone do something so cruel? The mistreatment my mother endured filled me with sorrow, and tears spilled from my eyes. Gently, she wiped away my tears and said, "Amy, I'm sorry for bringing up such things." She looked down, appearing apologetic. "Mom, you did nothing wrong. We're going to protect you from now on. They won't hurt you ever again." She gazed at me with a smile, and I smiled back at her. After breakfast, once she had settled down, I took her to the hospital after she had taken a shower. The medical tests revealed she was severely malnourished and dehydrated. Considering her age, hospitalization was recommended, so she was admitted for a few days. Thankfully, no other illnesses were detected, and she would be discharged as soon as she regained her nutrition. However, the doctor, in a stern tone, inquired about her living conditions. I explained the situation she had been in. It seemed the doctor initially suspected I might be abusing her, but once I clarified everything, the doctor's demeanor softened into a smile, and then he told me he would contact the authorities, since there was strong suspicion of abuse. This was just what I had hoped for, so I quickly agreed. After a while, a representative from social services arrived, and we discussed my mother's meals, confinement, and the violence she had endured. There were bruises all over her body. Given the severe nature of the situation, the representative said they would also consult with the police and then departed. Watching my mother sleep peacefully, I couldn't help but feel regret. If only I had realized sooner and checked in on her. Tears streamed down my face. "Mom, I'll never forgive them. They'll pay for this." I held onto her frail hand. She woke up, offering me a gentle smile. "When you go to my house, please bring my boombox and my box of stand-up comedy tapes." It was something she loved. I nodded firmly in agreement. The next morning, John and I headed to Tom's family home. My anger far outweighed my sorrow. But John was even angrier than I was. We rang the doorbell several times, but no one answered. Thinking they weren't home, we were about to leave when we heard a groggy voice. Knowing that Tom and Blair were inside, we used our spare key to unlock the front door and entered the house. Seeing us in the living room, Blair looked shocked. "What are you two doing here all of a sudden?" she exclaimed. I confronted Blair. "What's wrong with a child visiting her parents' house?" She mumbled, struggling for words. "Well, it's not like that, but..." Looking around the house, I was appalled. It was cluttered with trash, and the smell of rotting food was overpowering. The floor felt sticky as well. "This place is a mess. When was the last time you cleaned?" John remarked with a sense of astonishment. Tom, lounging on the sofa, clicked his tongue in annoyance upon seeing us. "It's because that hag doesn't clean," he muttered under his breath. John reacted immediately. "You mean to tell me you made her handle even the food waste?" With piercing eyes, John glared at Tom. Tom put his hand over his mouth, as if realizing he had said too much, and quickly left the room. As he departed, John commented, "You reek of alcohol. Have you been drinking all night?" I turned my attention back to Blair. Her hair was disheveled. Her shirt stretched out around the collar, revealing her undergarments. And it looked like she hadn't completely removed her makeup, leaving her eyes ringed in black. Noticing my gaze, Blair looked down, seemingly embarrassed and annoyed. "You should have called before coming over." "It's common courtesy. This is such an inconvenience," Blair said, picking up a cigarette from an ashtray and lighting it up. "Sleeping past noon without cleaning is your idea of common courtesy, I presume?" she retorted. Blair struggled to reply when Tom stormed back in and shouted, "Hey! Hey, where did that old hag go?" He must have noticed now, looking at her empty bed. "She's with us. She was in such a dire state that we had to hospitalize her. Had we been a bit later, she might have died," I replied, exaggerating a bit for effect. Tom glared at Blair. "I told you, you do too much." With a frustrated tone, Blair shot back. "You were the one who first said to tie her up because she was making noise in the middle of the night. After all, she gets food here, but she barely helps out around the house." Listening to them trade blame, I was boiling with rage. She hadn't eaten in 3 days, and didn't even have a single cent. It's unforgivable. With Tom not working and no income, what can we do? We're just trying to save. Even though both she and Tom appeared well-fed and healthy. But look at you two, healthy and plump, while she's starved. And where have you two been these past few days? "It's none of your business," Blair answered, feigning indifference. John, noticing a horse racing newspaper nearby, grabbed and flung it at Tom. "You've been betting on horse races in Chicago. We know about it." Tom uncomfortably scratched his head, searching for an explanation. "Well, that's, I became furious with Tom and Blair's unrepentant parasitic way of life, always taking from others. I was so frustrated that tears welled up in my eyes. Mom's all skin and bones, yet you two just spend the money we send in Mom's Social Security without working. We know you've been partying with it." John must have been just as mad. He loudly confronted Tom. "You two never even gave her decent food and even tied her to the bed at night, didn't you?" According to Mom, Tom and Blair lived it up with the money John sent and her Social Security, wasting it on bars, horse races, and casinos. "Where's your proof? That old hag just says whatever she wants." Blair snapped. Was this her true nature? I decided to bring out the evidence. From the bed where Mom used to sleep, I brought her cherished tape player into the living room. I put in a cassette tape labeled as stand-up comedy. Why would a stand-up comedy tape be evidence? Is the comedian going to testify or something? Tom and Blair smirked at me. Ignoring them, I pressed play. "Just tie her up. We're gonna hit the tracks in Chicago and make some big bucks, so you better behave. Look, if you don't, you'll get hurt like last time. When we get back, tell us where your checkbook is." Seriously, I can't find it anywhere. I wonder where she hid it. The sound coming from the tape player wasn't comedy, but Tom and Blair's voices abusing my mom. My mom. She had recorded their abuse on a cassette tape. That's probably why she wanted me to bring it. Upon hearing this, Tom and Blair went weak in the knees and collapsed. Is this what Tom called the joys of life? "It's all your fault that my mom became so thin and frail." "It's not our fault," Blair shouted back at us. As John and I were looking down at Tom and Blair, the doorbell rang. I went to answer it. I returned to the living room with police officers and a government official. Tom and Blair looked shocked. The official showed them medical reports and a doctor's statement. The police went to check the bed. "You two committed a grave crime. You'll pay for this. Let the police properly investigate and realize just how horrible the things you've done are." I handed over the recording of the abuse to the police. "Tom and Blair will likely face the appropriate charges," John told Tom. "I'm not gonna send you money anymore. We're cutting ties with you too. This house belongs to my mom. We're gonna sell it. Don't come back." Suddenly Tom apologized. Probably he finally realized the gravity of his situation. "Amy, if we lose this house, we won't have anywhere to live. I promise I'll really look for a job this time. Please give us a break." Following suit, Blair also said, "I'll also help take care of your mother. Please forgive us." The two of them seemed to finally realize the dire situation they were in, and with a change of heart, they apologized calmly. "It's too late. We can't trust you two anymore. We'll change, I swear. Just give us one more chance. Just this once." How many times will they keep saying just this once? Do they really think we'll give in? "You'll definitely pay for what you've done. Please never contact us again." John pulled out a checkbook from a box containing a cassette tape. "This is what you were desperately looking for, right? This checkbook contains the money my parents worked hard to save and my father's insurance money. It was there all along. If only we had that." "Oh no," they began to wail loudly. When they were taken away by the police, they were bad-mouthing each other. They resisted until the end. They cried and screamed the entire time. They were forcibly pushed into a police car and taken away. Evidence against Tom and Blair, aside from the audio recording of abuse, included bed restraints. Additionally, neighbors had heard Tom's loud rants and Blair's shrieks during the night and testified to the abuse. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that a large insurance policy had been taken out on my mother, and they were being rigorously interrogated every day. The police shared this information with me during their interviews. They were certain to be found guilty and face a severe sentence. They are likely going to spend some time in prison. I hope they truly face their crimes and atone for them. I'm pressing charges against them for damages. After their release, they'll probably be paying for the rest of their lives. I told John I wanted to live with my mom. John readily agreed. "Yeah, let's live with her." After discussing with my mother, we decided to use the money from selling the family house to renovate ours. Even though Mom, John, and I are getting on in years, it's a new beginning for us. It's quite exciting. Mom seems to be looking forward to it, chatting happily with the architect about wanting a spacious kitchen and such. Our peaceful days continued until my eldest son's wife announced her pregnancy. She mentioned wanting to raise her child at our home after giving birth. Her parents are currently on an overseas assignment, so she turned to us for support. It will be my first grandchild and my mom's first great-grandchild. Our quiet days are on hold for now, and it seems we're going to be busy for a while. There's something I've been wanting to ask my mom someday. Do you think John and I are like you and Dad were as a couple? Look at this. Isn't it a fantastic clock? It's a housewarming gift. Please accept it. Saying this, Amanda handed me a large wrapped item, which I hurriedly received. Even though I hadn't entered the house yet, Amanda, who gave me the housewarming gift right at the entrance, was looking at me with a big smile on her face. As Amanda mentioned, inside was indeed a clock. It was a wooden clock meant to be hung on the wall, with a small birdhouse on top of the dial. I'm sure at certain times, pigeons or small birds would pop out of it. As I thanked her and received the gift, I suddenly caught sight of something sparkling out of the corner of my eye. Attracted by the light, I stared intently at it, and suddenly a wave of anger surged within me. Driven by that impulse, I swung the clock with both hands and smashed it against a garden stone right in front of my startled mother-in-law, Amanda. My name is Jennifer. I'm 30 years old, and I work in administrative tasks at a factory. My father also works in the factory, and I've always been told that manufacturing isn't just about the on-site work. It's also supported by people working behind the scenes. Perhaps influenced by this, I've always been drawn to behind-the-scenes work, rather than being in the limelight since I was a child. During school festivals, when we did plays, I would take on roles like managing props instead of acting, and I also managed the administrative tasks. I also managed the baseball team in my club activities. I may not have stood out, but there were always people watching me, and a simple thank you from them made me feel valued. That's why I aimed for an administrative position when job hunting. Initially, inspired by my admiration for my father, I wanted to work in administration at a factory. However, it seemed that positions there were more favorable to people with specialized knowledge or experience, and I couldn't get a job at the places I wanted. The first job I landed was an administrative position at a retail store. However, I couldn't give up on my dream of working in a factory. While working, I studied machinery a lot and prepared for a job change. I also wanted to gain experience in administrative tasks, so after working for 3 years, I aimed to change jobs. Fortunately, I was hired for an administrative position at the factory of my choice, and now handle behind-the-scenes tasks there every day. It was at this workplace that I met Daniel, my future husband. Daniel is a senior colleague who works on site, 2 years older than me. Even though I work behind the scenes, I always have respect for the on-site workers. Daniel in particular is always cheerful, no matter how busy he gets, and he lifts the spirits of the entire workplace. He is also very dedicated to his work. Moreover, he is considerate not only towards on-site workers, but also towards us in administration. We got closer after sitting next to each other at the company's year-end party and talking. We found common ground in discussing manufacturing related to machinery. I enjoyed learning in detail from Daniel, who had deeper knowledge than I did. It didn't take long for our relationship to develop from there. 2 years into dating, we went on our first trip together. The destination was Hawaii, a place I had always wanted to visit. On the last day of the trip, Daniel proposed to me at a restaurant in our hotel. It happened after we finished our dessert during a fancy full-course dinner, which we had to commemorate our last night there. I'm so full. This really has been the best trip from start to finish, Daniel said, raising his hand to call the waiter. To my surprise, a cake came out. Huh? We just had dessert, didn't we? I involuntarily covered my mouth when I saw the cake. Written on the cake was, "Will you marry me?" Then right there, Daniel got down on one knee and opened a ring box. Inside was a diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" I was so overwhelmed hearing those words directly from Daniel that I couldn't speak. I could only nod with tears streaming down my face. There was applause from the waiters and other customers around us, and it felt like a flash mob, which was embarrassing, but unforgettable. I was very happy. But there was one thing I was concerned about. It happened when I went to Daniel's house to announce our engagement. "I've heard about you. You're a very hardworking and sincere young woman. By the way, how old are you, Jennifer?" When his mother, Amanda, asked me and I responded, "I will be 28 years old," she said, "What?" "I hope everything is fine with having grandchildren." I was expecting a younger bride. Immediately, Daniel stepped in and said, "Mom, stop talking about that. We are about to get married. Don't be rude." But Amanda didn't seem convinced. I wanted to have children and hoped to conceive as soon as possible, but Amanda's words upset me. Moreover, after getting married, I was supposed to live with Daniel's parents in their house. It was Daniel, who had been living at home, who suggested this. The house was close to my workplace, so I couldn't easily refuse. After the marriage, Amanda kept saying things like, "My friend's grandchildren are so cute. I want to have mine soon, and I want to play with my grandchildren as soon as possible." Eventually, she even started meddling in our intimate life, saying things like, "Jennifer, are you measuring your body temperature properly?" You know, there are methods like the something method. You really have to think about making babies. But later on, I found it difficult to get pregnant and gradually became anxious. Daniel and I decided to go to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor told us, "There is no problem with your husband, but your uterus has a slightly complex shape, making it difficult for the embryo to implant." I asked hesitantly, "Does that mean I can't get pregnant?" And the doctor replied, "Scientifically, it's not completely impossible. However, there are no known cases of pregnancy in this situation in the United States." So the problem is with me. It was clear that my body had issues with getting pregnant. The moment I was told this, I broke down and cried to Daniel. I felt like I was failing in my role as a woman and started blaming myself. Daniel tried to comfort me by saying, "It's okay." But no matter what he said, I couldn't shake off the feeling that it was my fault. Daniel himself seemed lost for words, and this made me feel even worse. From that day on, I found it hard to focus on housework and my job, and Amanda started to worry about me. "I'm okay. I'm just tired from work," I would reply. But it was clear that I was depressed, and both Daniel and I were acting differently. Amanda noticed and said, "Something is wrong, isn't it? Talk to me. The atmosphere in this house is getting depressing." Reluctantly, Daniel and I decided to tell Amanda about what the doctor had said. I couldn't respond, but Daniel said, "Mom, that's no way to talk." But Amanda continued, "I knew it. I should never have let you marry her." I had a bad feeling about her from the start. I checked if grandchildren would be possible, didn't I? Blaming Jennifer won't solve anything, Mom. It's not her fault. Daniel defended me, but Amanda kept going. It's obviously the bride's fault. And you, Daniel, should have listened to my advice. Enough is enough, Mom. You're going too far. Why are you taking her side? And with that, Amanda stormed off to her room. Don't worry about it, Jennifer. You don't have to mind her, Daniel comforted me. Daniel, actually, I've been thinking about this too. What do you mean? I think it's too painful for you to stay with me. You want to have children, right? But you can't have them with me. I think it would be better for us to break up. But Daniel said, I married you because I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Jennifer. Whether we can have children or not, as long as we can live together, that's all that matters to me. Please, stop thinking about breaking up just because we can't have children. I remember the tears welling up in my eyes at Daniel's warm words. After learning about the results of the examination, my mother-in-law, Amanda, really wanted a grandchild. She started to harass and be nasty to me because I couldn't have children. When my father-in-law or Daniel was around, they would protect me. However, Amanda didn't like that, and she would be mean when the two of them weren't there. I would consult with Daniel about it every day. However, I was worried that if Amanda thought I was tattling to Daniel, it might make her even angrier. Daniel didn't say anything directly, but he did his best to keep Amanda and me apart. Still, Amanda's mean behavior didn't stop, and both Daniel and I were at our wits' end. Finally, Daniel couldn't take it anymore and confronted Amanda. We have our own circumstances in this marriage. What do you want from Jennifer? Isn't it enough that she lives here with us? Stop being so mean to her. Amanda snapped back in rage. Quiet. I will not accept a daughter-in-law who can't give me grandchildren. Why would you say something like that? I can't live with you anymore. This is not fair to Jennifer. We're moving out. Angry, Daniel declared that we were going to live separately. In fact, we had been looking for a new place for quite a while, so we started to seriously consider our options. Initially, we were searching for a rental that we could move into immediately, but we couldn't find a place that met our expectations. So we reevaluated our budget, considering our living expenses, and we both agreed that building a new house would be the best option for us. Building a new house would be a better option for our future. Though we couldn't move as quickly as we could have if we rented, thanks to Daniel confronting Amanda, my father-in-law also started to keep a closer eye on Amanda to ensure she didn't mistreat me. So we were able to move on the scheduled day without any major issues. We thanked my father-in-law and moved into our new house. Life without Amanda was blissful. However, just a week after we moved, I received a call from my father-in-law. I'm sorry, it seems like Amanda has found out our new address. She snooped around and found a note with our address written on it. We hadn't told her our new address because we thought it might lead to more trouble. And she says she's coming over now, no matter what. I'm really sorry. A few hours later, Amanda and my father-in-law arrived. When I opened the front door, there stood Amanda, holding some bags, and my father-in-law, who looked apologetic. I wanted to close the door right away, but Amanda quickly said, I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable because of me. She was being unusually humble and apologetic. I was stunned and looked at Daniel in disbelief. Amanda didn't try to force her way into the house. Instead, she handed me a large package. This is a housewarming gift. Hang it in your bedroom or something. I bought this clock and the salesperson told me it's good feng shui to put it in the bedroom. I took the package and was about to thank her when I noticed Amanda wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, she was already turning on her heel, pulling my father-in-law along to leave. Well, then we're heading back. You two take care and live well together. Wait, you just got here. Are you leaving already? I'm sorry, son. This is Amanda's way of making amends. She didn't want to intrude inside our house. We just came to give you this gift, my father-in-law said, smiling apologetically while Amanda pulled him away. Seeing Amanda's submissive attitude made me feel bad, and I could understand why my father-in-law didn't want to let her in. However, I could faintly see a sly smile on Amanda's face. Encouraged by Daniel's excited voice, I decided to open the package right there. It was a wooden wall clock, decorated with a small birdhouse-like ornament. It seemed like a cuckoo clock, and when I touched it, I noticed something. Without a word, I lifted the clock high with both hands and smashed it onto a garden stone nearby. The sound of destruction made Amanda turn around in shock, while Daniel and my father-in-law just stared, mouths agape. With a shocked expression, Daniel shouted at me, "What are you doing? Mom has reflected on her actions and even gave us a gift, and you're acting like this?" Apologize to Mom now. Amanda, my mother-in-law, was covering her mouth, muttering, "How could you?" My father-in-law still had his mouth wide open, shocked by my actions. I took deep breaths, trying to calm myself down. Then I squatted down and took something out from the wreckage of the broken clock. "Can you still say that after seeing this?" I showed Daniel a certain part from inside the clock. "What is this? Why is this here?" Saying this, Daniel clenched his fist, his anger evident. Amanda's attitude was strange, wasn't it? She handed it over as if she was pushing it onto us, even though it was supposed to be an apology and a gift. That's when I thought something was off and took a closer look. "Amanda, do you know what this is?" "I have no idea." Even after showing her the two parts, Amanda shook her head, claiming ignorance. However, her complexion had completely changed to a pale shade. "It's part of a camera and a voice recognition device," Daniel said, stunned. I could see my father-in-law shocked out of the corner of my eye. When I touched the birdhouse, I felt suspicious because the door wouldn't move at all. I thought it was just a decoration, but then I saw a small round black hole in the center. When the sunlight hit it, I noticed something glittering inside and realized it was a camera lens. "Amanda, you say you don't know, but why would there be a camera inside this?" That's when I realized, after smashing it, that there was more than just a lens inside the clock. There was also a part resembling a microphone, suggesting that one could see and hear through this wall clock if they checked on the corresponding device or app. Since it's a wall clock, it's meant to be hung inside a room, and in the end, Amanda must have given us this clock to spy on our lives. What the hell? Mom went to such lengths. Daniel was trembling with rage. Amanda was looking around nervously, clearly disturbed. My father-in-law looked at her and sighed deeply. "Is this true? You went to such lengths?" "Mom, you knew about this, right? If we had hung this in our bedroom, you would have had full access to the footage and audio from our bedroom." My father-in-law was in shock. "Why would you give us something like this?" "What were you thinking?" "Oh, come on, why did you have to notice?" "If you had just accepted it quietly, you would have looked so much more charming. But this daughter-in-law of mine," Amanda retorted unabashed. "What are you talking about? You're the one who planted a listening device. Why would you do such a thing?" As Daniel confronted Amanda angrily, she responded, "I was worried whether my daughter-in-law was fulfilling her duties as a wife at night properly. I thought perhaps the reason you two haven't had children isn't a physical issue, but a mental one. So I wanted to make sure she was behaving properly as a wife in the bedroom, and if not, I was planning to force her to divorce for being a worthless woman." "It wouldn't have been good for you, Daniel." As she spoke, Amanda slammed her belongings against the fence, enraged. Daniel, also angry, snapped back at her. "I've told you I'm perfectly happy as things are now, and there's no way you could have rigged this clock by yourself. Is there someone else trying to come between us?" To this, Amanda responded, "If I had accomplices who thought the same way, it could have been done even better. I had a clockmaker acquaintance of mine especially make this clock with a camera and microphone built in. What have you done? Do you even realize how awful this is? At my father-in-law's words, Amanda responded, throwing stones at the fence. The worst one here is your wife. She can't even have children, yet she had the nerve to marry you. What about my grandchildren? Stop it right now. As my father-in-law held Amanda back, he said, I'm sorry about this. We'll be leaving for today, and pushed Amanda into the car, driving away. Standing there in a daze, Daniel turned to me and said, I'm sorry. My mom said some really terrible things. It's not your fault, Daniel. Afterwards, I couldn't help but wonder what had become of Amanda and my father-in-law. I didn't want to have anything to do with Amanda anymore, but I was worried about how my father-in-law would handle the situation and what our relationship with Amanda would be like in the future. A few days later, I received a call from my father-in-law. I'm really sorry about the other day. Those were his first words. I actually wanted an apology from my mother-in-law, not him. He hadn't done anything wrong. No, Dad, are you okay after all that? Daniel spoke, sounding concerned. We had a big fight after that, as during that, a lot of things came up. It seems that my wife Amanda has been making snide remarks and harassing not just Jennifer but others as well. I was surprised. I had no idea she was treating other people the same way. Wait, what do you mean? Daniel was also shocked and asked his father for clarification. There's a woman in our neighborhood who can't have children, and apparently Amanda has made snide remarks and harassed her as well. So she's been doing this to strangers as well, not just family? It seems that way. When I told her it was wrong to treat Jennifer so harshly, she said she's been doing the same to other women who can't have children. I was horrified. What he described was truly horrifying. I wondered why she would do such things. That's awful. She's been doing all this behind our backs? I could hear the anger in Daniel's voice as his father tried to calm him down. Now calm down and let me finish. Calm down? How can I calm down when my own mother is acting like this? It's infuriating and embarrassing. Don't you feel the same way, Dad? You're right. That's why I went to apologize to that family as soon as I heard about it. But I also found out that a few houses down, a daughter-in-law was verbally abused by Amanda to the point of depression, and they moved away a few years ago. I'm scared of what the neighbors think, and I can't bear it anymore. My father-in-law sounded truly distressed. I can't handle this anymore, so I've decided to get a divorce. I was shocked, but Daniel remained calm and concerned. Is that so? I agreed with the divorce. Are you going to be okay, Dad? Then my father-in-law explained calmly, as if he had already made up his mind. I'm going to move out of this house too. I owe an apology to the neighbors. But don't worry about me. I've already found a good place to live through an acquaintance. I'll move as soon as the paperwork is done. I wanted to let you know because Amanda might head your way, now that I've kicked her out of the house today. I'm worried about that. Even in his own time of distress, he was still looking out for us. I see. Got it. We'll handle it if she comes here. I'm really sorry again. I'll get in touch once I've settled down. He spoke politely and hung up. Thanks to Daniel putting the phone on speaker, I was able to hear the entire conversation. And just a few hours later, Amanda showed up at our house with her bags. Please help me. After the divorce, he kicked me out of the house. I have nowhere to go. Let me stay here. She said this as soon as she arrived. Daniel asked her, why did you get a divorce? It's not just because of this recent incident, is it? Well, I have my reasons. We heard from Dad. Amanda's eyes widened in surprise. So in addition to Jennifer, you've also been nasty to the other daughter-in-laws in the neighborhood? Well, and because of your verbal abuse, one of them even became depressed? Hold on, that's an exaggeration. There's no proof that it was my fault. You're making it sound like I'm the criminal. Besides, how can a woman not have children? I went through a lot to give birth to you. And I can't even see my own grandchildren because of her. Just looking at her makes me sick. Amanda had flipped her anger switch. Mom, happiness isn't just about having children. Daniel responded calmly. I know that. Just let me stay here for now. I'm sorry, but that's not possible. I've decided to be happy with Jennifer. I can't live with you the way you are now. You need to think about what you've done. Why not? You're my son. I gave birth to you and raised you. Show some filial piety. I'm grateful to you for giving birth to me and raising me. But this is a different matter. Why? Just let me stay here. As she said this, she started throwing things from the entryway towards us. Seeing that there was no reasoning with her, we decided to call the police. We managed to keep Amanda from coming in until the officers arrived. When they did, they took her outside. Damn it. So angry. What's going to happen to me now? I never want to see your face again. That was the last thing I heard her shout. I didn't want to see her face either, so I thought to myself, well, he didn't have to come in the first place. It seemed like Amanda had received a stern warning from the police, as she never came to our house again afterward. Soon after, Daniel's father decided to move, and incredibly, he moved into an apartment within walking distance from our house. If that woman ever comes around, I'll take responsibility and handle it. He assured us, which honestly was a relief. When we went to his house for a housewarming visit, we asked about Amanda's current situation. It seems like she's living in public housing now. You know, the affordable housing that prioritizes seniors and those with special circumstances, he explained. Oh, we lived in a place like that a long time ago, didn't we? Exactly, it's similar to that. Back then, families with children were given priority for those apartments too, he reminisced. Is Amanda working? It seemed like Daniel could hardly believe that Amanda would be holding down a job. She started working part-time, but nothing seems to last long. She's been a housewife for so long, and she's not great with people. She always causes problems in her relationships with others, creating conflicts, and that's why she ends up losing her job. Then the cycle repeats as she looks for another part-time job, he detailed. I see. Well, I didn't expect it to last. It's good she's at least trying to work. By the way, how does Dad know about Amanda's current situation? Is he in contact with her? I really don't want to keep in touch with her, but we were together for so many years. I can't help but worry a bit. I occasionally get in touch with her to find out how she's doing. I think it's better to know her situation in case something happens. In case something happens, we need to deal with it before it becomes a problem for you and Daniel again. It seemed like Daniel's kind-hearted father still cared about Amanda's well-being to some extent. As of now, she's not working steadily, so she's living somewhat depressively while receiving welfare. Meanwhile, we started keeping a dog. One day when we happened to visit a pet store, we came across a toy poodle. Hey, this little one just made eye contact with me, didn't it? I exclaimed excitedly. Me too. So cute. Daniel joined in, and when we looked at its birth date, I was overjoyed. Daniel, look at its birthday. What's up? Oh, that day. Right. It's the day you proposed to me in Hawaii. Don't you feel like it's fate? Feeling a sense of destiny, we decided to take this young toy poodle home with us. Since then, we've been doting on this dog as if it were our own child. Additionally, with Daniel's father moving nearby, he started visiting us frequently, making our family life lively and cheerful. Did you get Mom and Sis's stuff? We're going to be supporting them from now on, Jason said over the phone, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. As always, Jason only thinks about himself. He probably sees me as just a convenient presence. I've decided to cut ties with Jason and his family. I got it. Just sent my stuff to my new condo, too. I replied cheerfully to Jason. A condo? Jason muttered and then went silent for a while. My name is Cheryl Hayward. I'm 55 years old and work for a real estate company. Working in real estate sales is a continuous struggle. Especially when I first joined the company, there were many challenges. First, there was the task of finding new clients. Since I work at a branch in a smaller city, I first have to find clients who are interested in buying property. Even after visiting numerous homes, I'd often get rejected. Sometimes I'd get discouraged by unkind words, but by persisting in my sales efforts, I gradually built a stable clientele. Currently, I live with my husband, Jason. Jason and I became close in college and eventually tied the knot. Of course, he was the one who proposed. We have one son, Jake, who's already grown up and working. Right now, he lives a few hours away by plane because of his job, which makes me a bit lonely. but I always look forward to the long weekends when he comes home. We live near my in-laws. They live with my sister-in-law who's 5 years older than me. She's a huge fan. She's a huge fan of a particular music artist and often travels from Maine to Texas to attend concerts. She seems to be so obsessed with this artist that she hasn't thought about getting married. My in-laws rent an old 2-bedroom apartment that is about 40 years old and showing signs of wear and tear everywhere. Moreover, their apartment is on the 4th floor, but there is no elevator, so climbing up and down the stairs is quite a challenge. However, Jason loves visiting his parents, often saying, "I'm gonna visit my folks," and then he's off. Both of my parents have passed away, so I haven't opposed Jason's visits to his family. Living with my in-laws isn't even a topic of conversation. They are still in good health, and with my sister-in-law around, there are no issues. I was optimistic about the situation at the time, but one day I was caught off guard. As soon as Jason got home, he said, apparently, the apartment where Mom and the others live is going to be demolished. They are being asked to leave. I was taken aback by the sudden news. That's so sudden. What are they gonna do? I asked hurriedly, but Jason nonchalantly said, "Oh, they'll figure it out. They are all adults, right? But hey, can you get dinner ready?" Jason said that and went to his room to change. I got nervous. I would be in deep trouble if my in-laws started to rely on us. That's because my mother-in-law and sister-in-law treat me terribly. Their attitude was blatantly obvious from our very first meeting 30 years ago, when Jason and I started dating and visited his parents' house for the first time. "Nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting to know you," I greeted them with a smile. However, both the parents and the sister just glared at me. I was puzzled and didn't know what to do. Then, the mother-in-law sighed heavily and said, "So you are Jason's girlfriend? I was wondering what kind of girl you would be. You don't look glamorous at all. You look rather poor." Excuse me. I was terribly upset by her words and behavior. While I was lost for words, the sisters-in-law chimed in. "She really does look poor. Jason, your taste in women has gotten quite bad. That's for sure." I looked at Jason, hoping he would help me out, but my expectations were quickly shattered. I have only dated flashy, beautiful women before, but I thought a girl like her would do. "As I say," he said, laughing. "Indeed, Cheryl here probably doesn't get much attention from men. She must be desperate not to be dumped by Jason. She would likely do anything he tells her to." His sister nodded in agreement. In retrospect, I should have broken up with Jason right then and there. But I was so in love with him at the time, I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me. I even misunderstood Jason's terrible behavior as his way of helping me fit in with his family. And so we got married and hell awaited me. After a while, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law started ordering me around. "Hey, the microwave is acting up. Go buy a new one." The mother-in-law would suddenly demand over the phone. Confused and panicked, I rushed to the electronics store. I bought the microwave she specified and delivered it to her house, but she didn't even thank me. "Now that we've got the microwave, we have no use for you. Just go home," she said dismissively. Of course, she didn't reimburse me for the microwave. And after that, she kept ordering me around. But if I ignored her orders, she would tattle on me to Jason. Then Jason would yell at me, "You are part of my mother's family, aren't you? Just think of it as showing respect to your elders and buy it." This went on for a long time, so I reluctantly put up with it. The sister-in-law was no better. She would suddenly contact me saying, "I want to go to my favorite band's concert." Arrange the plane tickets for me, and the date she wanted to travel was always just around the corner. Of course, there were often no available seats on the flights. So when I told her that the flights were all booked up, my sister-in-law suddenly got furious. "What's wrong with you? Why are you so useless? This is unbelievable. Fine, I'll go a day earlier, so arrange a hotel for me too. You're paying for everything, since this was your mistake." She would rant and then hang up the phone on me. I ended up paying for her plane tickets and hotel stays with my own salary. The father-in-law was completely under the thumb of his wife and daughter. He's right, you know. What they say is always correct and you're always wrong. "Now go buy me some booze," he would say. The in-laws and sister-in-law kept making unreasonable demands, wearing me down. But the problem wasn't just with them. Jason was a huge problem too. It was a Monday night when I came home. I found Jason sitting on the living room couch in the dark, with no lights on. I sensed something unusual and asked Jason, "Is something wrong?" Jason responded without making eye contact, "I quit my job. I had a fight with my boss today." What? I was taken aback. From what I heard, it seemed like his resignation was accepted on the spot. Normally, it would take about a month to resign due to the handover process. However, in Jason's case, his boss allowed him to resign effective immediately. Even after hearing this story, I couldn't come to terms with it. "What are you going to do now? You need money to live. Do you have any prospects for a new job?" I bombarded him with questions. Then Jason casually said, "I'll start job hunting from tomorrow. Cheryl will cover the living expenses for a while." I was about to respond to Jason's unreasonable statement, but he glared at me and said, "I married you, saving you from a lonely single life. At least be useful at times like these." Jason continued to watch TV with a sour mood. Once he gets like this, he never changes his opinion. On top of that, he sometimes takes out his frustration on objects. There was even a time when he damaged the refrigerator. I can't deal with him breaking things around the house. Reluctantly, all I could say was, "Okay, I understand." Afterwards, Jason still hasn't found a new job. He goes out occasionally, but it's unclear whether he is actually job hunting. Moreover, he stopped contributing to our living expenses altogether, forcing me to cut back on groceries. However, Jason eats a lot and has expensive taste. When I make economical meals, he eats everything, including my portion, and then complains, "Are you trying to make a point because I'm not working? Serve me dishes with more beef. Having a stingy wife like you makes me feel pitied." I wonder whose fault this is. Yet, I couldn't stand up to him strongly because I still have feelings for Jason. Apologizing, I said I'm sorry while feeling mentally exhausted. Then one day, the doorbell rang, and I went outside. "Who is it?" There stood two men from a moving company. "You're the Haywards, right?" "We're here to deliver the requested items," the mover said, proceeding to bring the items inside. Wait a moment. Isn't there some mistake? I panicked and stopped the movers. With a puzzled look, one of the movers said, "We received a proper request from the homeowner, Jason Hayward. We can't just stop because of what you say." And the movers continued to bring in the boxes. I knew I needed to act quickly, so I called Jason. Luckily, he answered right away. "Jason, there are movers here bringing in a ton of boxes. What is all this stuff?" And in the next moment, Jason dropped a bombshell. "You've received my mom and sister's stuff? We're gonna support them starting today." My husband Jason said it as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "My mom and sister are being forced to move out of their apartment." They moved out of their apartment. We had spare rooms, so I suggested they live with us. They also mentioned that they could contribute some of my dad's pension to me, which would be extra pocket money for me. As always, Jason only thought about himself. He planned to use the money, which was supposed to help with additional living expenses, as his own pocket money. Living with my in-laws would definitely increase our living expenses. However, Jason had no intention of contributing to the household. In his eyes, I was just a convenient source of money. I decided it was time to cut ties with Jason and his family. I had loved him so much that I endured his harsh treatment, but this incident made my feelings for him fade away. While I was making this quiet resolution, Jason continued nonchalantly. "So, how long will it take to unpack everything?" Jason asked in a calm voice. I thought to myself, what is he saying? And my voice dropped, but it seemed like Jason didn't notice. He stated matter-of-factly, "So it's about unpacking. My mom and sister are getting old, you know? We can't ask them to do such a hard task, right? While you're unpacking, we're gonna stay at a hotel." I was furious at Jason's insensitivity, expecting me to unpack all of his parents' belongings. I needed to make him regret this. After a bit of thought, I said, "About a week, I guess." Suddenly, Jason responded in a displeased tone. "A week? That's way too long. You're really slow, you know? I'll talk to my mom and the others, so make sure you get it done in a week." Also, the paperwork for the moving company fee will be sent to the house later on. Make sure you receive it, okay? Jason just said his piece and hung up the phone. Is this how you ask someone for a favor? I was really irritated. Just you wait, I muttered quietly to myself. And a week later, Jason contacted me again. You finished unpacking, right? He asked. We're about to head back home with my mom and everyone. Did you get the paperwork for the moving company fee? Jason sounded cheerful, and I could hear his parents and sister in the background. So we get to live with our convenient housekeeper from now on, huh? You'll do as I say, right? It's unpaid work, but we're family after all. That's only natural, right? Mom, that's really blunt, his sister said, trying to hold back her laughter. But, well, she's not real family, so being a housekeeper is appropriate, I guess. That's right. She's not a real family after all, his father agreed. These people aren't my family. They were strangers with a twisted relationship from the start. So I replied with a smile on my face. I've received it. I just sent my stuff to my new place in a high-rise condo. I responded cheerfully to Jason. Duh? A high-rise condo? Jason and his parents fell silent after muttering those words. In fact, right after Jason's call, I had taken action. First, I reported the whole situation to Jake. He got terribly angry and decided to take my side. Then, there was something I hadn't told Jason about. Actually, I had purchased a room in a high-rise condo as an investment. My real estate company specializes in investment condos for the affluent. In my second year at the company, I took a big leap and bought a room in a high-rise condo with a 35-year mortgage. It's a one-bedroom with a living room, not very spacious. And even though it's in a high-rise, I bought a unit on the 3rd floor. So the purchase price was on the lower end for that building. Still, it was a big purchase, something meant to last a lifetime. I'm quite proud that I had the courage to make such a purchase. I rented it out immediately after buying it. As for the mortgage payments, the rental income had been nicely offsetting them so far. However, the tenant had just moved out and the income had stopped. I thought it was good timing, so I decided to move in, I explained calmly. Then Jason spoke up. Why do you get to live in a high-rise condo by yourself? That's not fair. What are you gonna do with the house we were living in? Jason seemed quite flustered, which I could understand. After all, the house we were living in was a rental. Jason, being unemployed, certainly couldn't afford to pay the rent. His parents were living off their pensions. The rent for our rented house was significantly higher than for an apartment, and his sister was pouring all her salary into her music artist obsession, leaving her with almost no savings. I played dumb and answered, why not just live together as a family? The lease is under your name, so there's no need for any changes, right? No problem at all, right? I said cheerfully, but I could sense turmoil on the other end of the line. Jason, this house isn't owned, is it? The rent must be quite high. How much is it exactly? His mother started to panic. I can't afford to pay rent, since I'm spending all my money on my music artist obsession. And Jason, what do you mean by unemployed? How have you been managing living expenses? And my pension is just a pittance. I can't afford to pay the rent for such a big house. His father also sounded agitated. His parents and sister started to blame Jason all at once. And then, finally reaching his limit, Jason shouted at me. You've been spouting nothing but selfishness this whole time. I've had enough. We're getting a divorce. Fine by me. In fact, I've already consulted a lawyer. You should be receiving the official notice soon, I replied with a smile. Huh? Jason let out a voice filled with utter disbelief. Are you really sure about this? If you divorce Jason, you'll truly be alone, you know? And it'll be a lonely life in your old age. My sister-in-law was telling me this earnestly. It seems like she had definitely grasped that I was serious about the divorce. Seeing the situation turn sour, my mother-in-law also drew near to me. There's no need to divorce. We are family, aren't we? Just keep listening to what we say, and everything will remain calm as before. That's right. So stop being stubborn and come back home right now, my father-in-law chimed in as well. I couldn't help but be astounded at their sudden change of attitude now that they were in a tight spot. In the end, they probably just wanted me back because life would be tough without me. While I was thinking about this, Jason finally spoke up. Show some gratitude. We are a kind family. Apologize to us right away and come back. His parents and sister nodded in agreement. My sister-in-law even had the audacity to say, "I'll move into your high-rise condo instead. Just hurry up and vacate the place for me." I had absolutely no intention of going back. So I made my stance clear. No way. From the get-go, you guys were just after my money and free labor. There's no way I'd willingly return to being exploited like that. Jason and his family started hurling insults at me. Just be quiet. You're getting ahead of yourself. What about Jake? If you make him grow up with a single parent, it's gonna hurt his chances of getting married, you know? Jason said, almost as if he was enjoying this. And it's true, he dotes on Jake a lot. He is our adorable only son after all. My mother-in-law loves Jake dearly as well. If Jake comes back to us, let's live together. Just ignore this idiot, she said gleefully. My father-in-law and sister-in-law also seemed to be in high spirits. I wished their hopes would be crushed into dust. I've told Jake everything. He's on my side now. He despised you all. He might not even want to see you again, I told them cheerfully. Jason, unable to believe it, said, I thought Jake really loved me. His voice sounded on the verge of tears. He used to say over and over how much he loved Jake, saying he was the apple of his eye. So, this situation must have been especially hard for him to accept. Jake, my mother-in-law murmured, her voice filled with tears. My sister-in-law and father-in-law were silent. Perhaps they were at a loss for words. In the midst of this, Jason seemed to remember something. By the way, did you pay for the moving costs? My mother-in-law also seemed to recall saying that's right. Why on earth would they think that I, the person they oppressed, would pay for their moving costs? Especially when we were in the middle of discussing a divorce. So I answered calmly I didn't pay. I believe it was a few $1,000s. It's impressive that you can even bring up such an amount. Jason's voice trembled as he responded, I thought you were going to pay it. We don't have any money, and there's no way we can pay. Please just pay the moving costs at least. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were also flustered. Jason, what are we gonna do? We even bought new furniture. I thought I could live in a spacious apartment, so I charged my credit card to buy merchandise of my favorite celebrity. I was planning to push the payments onto Cheryl, my sister-in-law exclaimed, sounding almost like a scream. Jason and his parents continued to play the blame game. There was no point in continuing this conversation. It was clear nothing productive would come out of it. So I said we'll sort the rest out through our lawyers, ending the call. Then I calmly blocked Jason and his parents' contact information. Eventually, Jason and I got divorced. However, the divorce negotiations with Jason and his family were quite tumultuous. After all, Jason was unemployed. He was hoping to cancel the divorce and continue receiving financial support from me, just like before. Not to mention, he wanted me to bear the moving costs as well. But all his plans crumbled when Jake, whom he doted on, expressed his contempt for him. During the meeting at the law firm, Jake temporarily came back to our side. And he told Jason and his family, I consider only my mom as my family now. I can't call people who oppress her, like Dad and Grandma, my family. If you guys get divorced, I'm going with Mom. Jake firmly rejected Jason and the others. This had Jason and my mother-in-law at their wits' end. So they turned to me and said, You need to talk some sense into Jake. This is all your fault, isn't it? Talking about divorce and dragging the whole family into this mess. Don't you realize you're causing trouble? To that I responded decisively. So what? You want me to just keep putting up with this and continue being your maid? While Jason doesn't work and doesn't lift a finger at home, and you expect me to live with your mother and sister too, letting everyone walk all over me? There's no way I'm going back to that environment. Perhaps because I raised my voice, Jason and the others were taken aback. I calmed myself down and said, My family is Jake and Jake alone. From today onward, Jason and the rest are strangers to me. I won't have anything to do with you any longer, and I certainly won't be helping out with any living expenses. Hearing this, Jason and my in-laws had a look of frustration on their faces. Eventually, with my firm resolve and the persuasion of my lawyer, the divorce went through. However, after that, Jason and the others tried to reach out to me several times through the lawyer. We can't find work, and we're being forced out of our home. We borrowed money for the moving expenses from a loan shark, but the interest just keeps piling up. If this continues, we're ruined. Please, can't we start over? I'll do anything. According to my lawyer, Jason wasn't the only desperate one. My in-laws were also reaching out. Please, we're begging you to help us financially. Jason isn't working, he just sits at home watching TV. My legs and back hurt, and I can't do the housework properly, my mother-in-law pleaded. Can't you at least take care of me? The rent and living expenses are piling up and I just can't make ends meet, my father-in-law begged. Even my sister-in-law had the nerve to say, it's unfair that you get to live in a luxury condo while I'm stuck here. Let me live with you. Even after the divorce, they all seemed to think that I, their ex-daughter-in-law, would still do as they said. I asked my lawyer to politely decline their requests. In this situation, I figured that if left alone, Jason and his family would eventually self-destruct. As for me, I continued living my usual life in my luxury condo. The one thing that had changed was my contact with Jake. After divorcing Jason, Jake and I started talking more frequently. It turns out Jake has a girlfriend and they're planning to visit me soon, taking a trip to my place. Maybe, just maybe, my family is about to get a little bigger. Excited at the thought, I started searching online for restaurants that Jake and his girlfriend might like. Pregnancy and childbirth are a woman's job, right? Men don't really have a role in it. The words from Steven reflected well the reason he wasn't supportive when I became pregnant. Just before this, I received a call from Brittany. Hello? Right now, your husband is at the hospital with a pregnant woman. Wait, what? Steven is on a business trip. My mind was filled with confusion. I'm heading there right now. Turns out Lisa and Steven had been dating for the past year. The reason was due to Steven's selfish thinking. There's no way I could let Steven continue with his pathetic excuses. Normally I'm quite reserved, but this time my patience had truly run out. My name is Sarah. I used to work as a nutritionist in a general hospital, but for certain reasons I've become a stay-at-home mom now. I met my husband Steven about a year and a half ago at a friend's wedding. Unlike me, who struggles with conversation, Steven was always the life of the party. We started talking at the after party and exchanged contact details. Initially, I felt Steven was a bit frivolous, but soon I was drawn to his outgoing nature, and we quickly decided to get married after just 6 months of dating. Soon after our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Of course, I was thrilled about the baby, but with work and adjusting to married life, things got quite busy. I decided to quit my job and focus on raising our baby. The handover from that point was extremely hectic. Just when I thought I'd found a suitable replacement at work, I was devastated by some news. Our baby wasn't growing properly, leading to a heartbreaking outcome. The doctor told me, "It's not your fault. These things just happen sometimes," but I couldn't shake the feeling of regret. I blamed myself, thinking I had neglected taking care of my health because I was so swamped with work. As for my job, the transition was finally complete, and with the new replacement coming in, I decided to leave as planned. For a while, I chose to take it easy at home. When I announced my pregnancy, Steven was thrilled. But, given his personality, he sometimes said things that hurt me. During my pregnancy, I was naturally very careful with my diet. I believe most expectant mothers would be, but I had an edge. I'm a qualified nutritionist. Using my expertise, I prepared healthy meals every day. But it seemed that wasn't enough for my husband. He would say, "I can't eat these bland dishes all the time, but this menu is good for your health too." Eventually, Steven began pushing aside the meals I prepared and started eating greasy fast food right in front of me. "Yep, this is definitely the best," he would say. Being pregnant, my taste buds had changed, and often I couldn't bear the smell of his food. Moreover, Steven didn't quit smoking, even after knowing about our baby. It's one thing to smoke away from me, but he frequently lit up in the same room. "Steven, you know that smoking in front of me can harm our baby, right?" "I've heard about it, but a little bit won't hurt." "You smoke every day, even though you say that." "It makes me feel sick too, so stop it." "Well, isn't that a bummer?" Steven just playfully continued to smoke, making it impossible to have a serious conversation. As my pregnancy progressed, my belly started to show more. Wondering if I was pregnant or just a bit on the plump side, my husband began to tease me about my figure. Hey, chubby, could you get me a Coke? I'm not gaining weight, for no reason. It's because I'm pregnant. Don't say such trivial things. Chubby people need to exercise, right? I'm saying I'll let you go get me a Coke. What do you mean by letting me go? Isn't it just because he's too lazy to go buy it himself? Stop it, I'm not feeling well today and even moving hurts. If you want Coke, go buy it yourself. You really know how to kill the mood. If you were my ex-girlfriend, she'd at least say something like, sure, honey, I'll get it for you. Being compared to his ex really ticked me off. Well, maybe you should have married her then. You see, when someone makes a joke, you should reply with a joke. You're calling this a joke? Fine, the Coke thing was a joke too. It's getting late. Good night. But even after that, my husband continued to make insensitive remarks. He even took a photo of my belly while I was sleeping and posted it on social media without my permission. I protested strongly, but all he said was, everyone found it funny, so what's the problem? He sounded like I was talking to a child. By the way, I have a younger sister named Lisa, 2 years apart in age. Unlike me, who doesn't interact with many people and enjoys books and studying, my sister has always been outgoing and had many friends. She seems well aware of her strengths and often acts sweet and spoiled towards me. One morning during my pregnancy, I wasn't feeling well and had a doctor's appointment. I asked Steven if he could lend me the car, but he said he wanted to take the day off and relax. While we were arguing, I got a call from my sister. Hey Sarah, can you give me a ride today? I can't today, I have a hospital appointment. Then, through the phone, I heard Lisa's loud voice. What? I took the day off because I want to go to an outlet mall in the suburbs. It's a hassle when someone suddenly asks for a favor. I asked Lisa why it had to be today. There's a limited time sale on some designer items. I'm heading over now. It's a hassle, you know, the outlet mall is far, right? What if I miss my appointment? You shouldn't be so selfish. You want to lose friends? Anyway, I'm on my way there now. She hung up without waiting for a response. Just got a call from my sister. She wants me to drive her to the outlet mall. Just take her. Lisa doesn't have a driver's license, right? But I have a hospital appointment later. Wait, how did you know Lisa doesn't have a license? Oh, that? You told me once before. Just take her, will you? Steven was mumbling something unintelligible. In the meantime, Lisa, who lives nearby, quickly arrived at my house. You didn't have to come all the way here. Sarah was going to pick you up from your place. Sorry for the inconvenience. Don't just decide things on your own. I've been feeling nauseous all morning and it's been a tough day as it is. She's so narrow-minded. Put up with her even if she's such a pain as a sister. I was the one who was dragged into this. In the end, I had to drop my morning chores to accompany Lisa on her shopping trip. I wasn't interested in the outlet mall. But Lisa, being all excited, dragged me around so much that I felt like I might throw up. Our shopping took way longer than planned. I had to rush to drop her off, and I ended up being late for my doctor's appointment. Even when I got home and complained to Steven, all he said was, at least you were able to help out your sister, brushing it off casually. After the matter of the pregnancy ended, it took me a while to recover. For some time I would tear up just seeing mothers with small children. Meanwhile, Steven said he was going to see a friend's newborn and left the house. I decided to spend my day off relaxing and absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone all day. Eventually, Steven came back home. The baby was so cute. Look at this picture. Sorry, I'm not in the mood to see baby pictures right now. It's supposed to be a happy occasion. Don't you like seeing babies? Are you even a woman? His words deeply hurt me. It felt like he was implying that since I couldn't have a baby, I wasn't a true woman. Despite my subtle refusal, Steven kept showing me the picture. The baby on his phone was indeed very adorable. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. See, I told you the baby is cute. You're even getting emotional about it. Yes, babies are adorable. I wanted one too. But right now, the pain of losing my baby is too much for me. Like I care. Your main role is to give birth. It's your fault you failed. I finally broke down crying. Steven didn't seem to understand how I felt and continued to complain. I was talking to a friend over the phone about our situation. So what happened after all of that? One day, while spending a weekday at home, I received a call from a friend who works at a children's hospital. Hey, I saw your husband at the hospital with a pregnant woman. Really? Well, congrats. The woman next to him is your sister. He's accompanying her, such a sweet husband. I haven't seen my sister in about 6 months and had no knowledge of her being pregnant. Are you sure, Brittany? Isn't it someone else? I don't think so. I clearly remember the wedding pictures you showed me at your place. I'm pretty sure it's your husband and your sister. I'm heading there right now. I quickly hung up the phone and headed to the hospital. I met Brittany when she was working in administration at a general hospital. Since we lived close by, Brittany took the initiative to start our friendship. Later, Brittany, who has a child, switched jobs to work at a hospital closer to her home. Even so, our friendship continued, and now we frequently visit each other's homes. She had joyfully looked at my wedding photos, which we often shared. Being the positive person she is, she probably realized my husband was accompanying my sister and called to congratulate me. I rushed to the hospital in my car. Just then, Stephen and Lisa were coming out of the entrance. I decided to try one of Stephen's favorite jokes on them. I appeared before them and said, "Congratulations on the pregnancy. What a lovely couple you make." Both of them looked startled, glancing at each other. Lisa's voice checked Stephen as he tried to brush it off casually. "You haven't told Sarah about us yet, have you?" Lisa sighed and suggested we go to a nearby cafe. Of course, I agreed and drove them to the cafe. "Lisa, aren't you single? Do you have a baby on the way?" "Yes, it's Stephen's baby." "What do you mean? Why is there a baby between Stephen and you?" "We've been dating for the past year." I was shocked by Lisa's words. That would have been around the time we got married. Would that mean Stephen was seeing both of us at the same time? People might call it cheating, but I was serious about it. Seriously? Then what was our married life all about? I enjoyed our time together, but I kinda got tired of just being with you. Stephen says he prefers me. Their casual conversation gave me an intense feeling of discomfort. Apparently, during our wedding, Stephen had taken a shine to Lisa, who is vibrant and outgoing, and they began communicating afterwards. It seems for Stephen, our wedding was just another place to pick up women. To think he'd approach another woman at his own wedding. Lisa is cuter than you and she's more fun to be around. It was only natural for me to fall for her at first sight. Stephen said it without a hint of shame. I thought it was an opportunity when you got pregnant, right after our wedding. It was the perfect time to get closer to Lisa. When you were pregnant, things we could do became limited and it got boring at home. That's awful. So that's why you weren't supportive during my pregnancy. What do you mean by supportive? Pregnancy and childbirth are women's business. Men don't have anything to do with that. He's right. Maybe you relied too much on Stephen. Certainly when I was pregnant, I didn't have much time or emotional space. But is that a reason for someone to cheat? I began to realize my feelings for Stephen were waning. Besides, you started to get all gloomy when you had trouble with your pregnancy. I can't stand seeing that kind of negativity every day. Yeah, I get it. But unlike my sister, my pregnancy is going smoothly and I'm gonna give birth to a healthy baby. See, younger women are just better. At that point, I thought, there's no reason to accommodate this guy anymore. I felt determined to act on my feelings. Got it. Let's get a divorce. I thought it was an obvious decision, but Stephen seemed visibly shaken. Why the sudden decision? Can't you think it over? I couldn't quite grasp what Stephen was saying. Why? Aren't you planning to raise a child with Lisa from now on? I'll continue dating Lisa, but I want my home to be with Sarah. Both Lisa and I asked in unison why. Lisa is great to look at, and we get along, but she doesn't work or do any chores, living at her parents'. I can't support her on my salary alone. So you're saying you want to split the bills like we always have, and occasionally visit Lisa? Yes. Don't you think that's the most peaceful solution? Lisa and I replied in sync, no we don't. You think there's such a convenient arrangement? That's just not acceptable. Lisa and I were our little secret, you know? It added some spice to my life. Stephen's voice trailed off towards the end. Stephen, was that all your commitment worth? You never do anything at home, Lisa, and you're always wanting this lavish lifestyle. I have a lifestyle that suits me. My parents are still supporting me without complaining. I could see that. My parents have always spoiled my sister, treating her like a princess. As a result, Lisa has always had high standards and a penchant for luxury. Even today, despite her noticeable baby bump, Lisa is pushing herself to wear high heels, and she's paired them with upscale bags and accessories to match. Not working soon to be on maternity leave, such a lifestyle for Lisa seemed unreasonable. But that didn't mean I pity Steven. No, Steven. I won't settle for a life like this. Let's get divorced. I'll find a divorce lawyer right now. We'll split our assets 50-50. Let's discuss further through a lawyer. Steven's eyes widened. You're gonna strip me of my money too? You're 100% the reason for our divorce. Own up to it. What am I gonna tell my parents and the company? Lisa interrupts. Just tell them you married someone new. Think I can just say that? Come on, Steven. You were joking earlier, right? Now that I'm pregnant, you're gonna marry me, aren't you? Yes, I bless your union with Lisa, too. From behind Steven and Lisa, a silhouette approaches. Brittany, who finished her work, has joined us. I had texted her the location of this place. At a table for 4, Steven and Lisa sat on one side, and I sat opposite with Brittany. I'm Brittany. I've been good friends with Sarah. You're accompanying Sarah's sister to the hospital? That's so sweet of you. Brittany, clueless about the situation, beams with a smile. Steven and Lisa clearly looked uncomfortable. Well, the thing is, Steven looked at me with desperate eyes. I coldly ignored his gaze. Tell the truth, Steven. The thing is, I'm the father of Lisa's baby. What do you mean? Isn't Lisa Sarah's sister? Brittany looked back and forth between me and Lisa. I cheated on Sarah with her sister while she was pregnant. I can't believe it. So you're going to divorce Sarah? With a high-pitched voice, Brittany pressed him. I plan on staying married to Sarah, but I might visit Lisa's place every now and then. How can you think that'll fly? So Lisa is going to be a single mom? I guess so. Steven seemed like he hadn't thought that far ahead. That's all you've considered? Let me be clear. You never once accompanied her to her checkups, and today, you just came along for the ride. Brittany seemed to have strong feelings about the matter. When you arrived at the hospital, you quickly sat down, didn't help Lisa with her bags, and even made her handle the insurance card at the reception, right? What's your point? That's what partners do, right? I never once went with Sarah to the hospital when she was pregnant. He sounded like he wanted praise just for showing up at the hospital. I see pregnant women every day. I can tell you right now, if you keep this up, you're not going to be a good father. I was inwardly shocked to hear the usually mild-mannered Brittany speak so forcefully. But her observational skills during work were truly something to admire. Lisa seemed quite taken aback by Brittany's remark that Steven is not going to be a good father. Steven is kind to me, you know? I'm not fooled by superficial kindness. Lisa, raising a child alone is tough. Monthly child support is not going to be enough. Child support? If you don't marry, you have to pay. That's your responsibility. Quick math showed the expenses would be staggering. It didn't seem like a sustainable situation, but this was Steven's own doing. Steven seemed to grow anxious. Suddenly, he glanced at the cigarettes on the table. Mind if I smoke? Absolutely not. There's a pregnant woman right beside you. Don't you even have that much awareness? Brittany became even more stern, her expression turning fierce. I just can't handle this tension. He didn't even quit smoking when I was pregnant. With that attitude, I'm worried about the future. Sarah, you'd be better off divorcing him. I'll go get a lawyer's contact for you. I'll need to borrow your car. Brittany's decisiveness seemed to baffle both Steven and Lisa, but to me, her assertiveness was reassuring. With her usual brisk pace, Brittany left the place, apparently headed to a lawyer's office. Steven rested his forehead on his hand, elbow on the table. What am I going to do? Stay married to me and pay Lisa child support, or divorce me and marry Lisa, or pay alimony to both of us. I laid out the 3 options for Steven. Whichever he chose, tough times were clearly ahead. Isn't there another way? There isn't. At the end of the day, this is a mess you made. If you could show it in your actions instead of money, great, but I don't see that happening. I stared at the forlorn cigarette on the table. I'll do my best. That vague promise isn't going to cut it. With no resolution in sight, I turned to Lisa. Lisa, which one sounds good to you? Obviously the second one. I want us to raise our child together. After Steven comes back home or on his days off, I'd like some time for myself too. Right, so for the second option, we'll add helping with childcare on weekends and after work. As we discussed our future, Brittany returned with a lawyer's contact. I've brought it back. Whether you contact the lawyer or not is up to you too. I'd do it if I were in your shoes. Ike, of course, agreed immediately. Lisa and Brittany agreed as witnesses. Eventually, Steven reluctantly agreed too. We left the cafe, saw Brittany off, and I drove Steven and Lisa straight. And Lisa went straight to the lawyer's office. The divorce process started without any issues. That said, we couldn't just start living apart from today. Steven and I returned to the same house. Once we were alone as a couple, the house was filled with a heavy silence. Considering it might be our last time together, how about I make your favorite beef stew tonight? Yeah, sounds good. Tomorrow, start packing and look for a new place to stay. I'll be doing the same. I put in extra effort to make the stew better than usual. Soon, freshly made stew was placed on the dining table. I called out to Steven, but all I got was just a minute. He didn't seem to be coming to the table anytime soon. While waiting for the meal, he played games on his phone. It's always the same story. He keeps me waiting, with no sense of when to stop. It makes me think he acts just like a kid. I wonder if he'll do the same with Lisa. Finally, Steven sat down at the table. He took a big mouthful of the reheated stew. Why, this is spicy. I took a small bite myself. The spiciness was overpowering, making my mouth burn. After managing to swallow, a fiery heat surged in my stomach. With a triumphant and cheeky grin, I didn't hesitate to say, "You wanted some excitement in your life, right?" So I made it super spicy. Make sure you eat it all. The truth is I had mixed a super spicy sauce into the stew. I had seen this sauce being eaten by streamers on a video website where they called it the Extra Spicy Challenge. Back then, Steven and I had casually ordered it online to try for fun, never thinking it would come in handy like this. I brought over the usual healthy meal I had prepared for myself and began eating it in front of Steven. Steven, struggling with the spicy stew, gestured that he wanted some of my dish. "Oh, come on. You always said you couldn't eat the bland food I make. Didn't you prefer the stew?" I confidently finished my mild meal and then took away Steven's phone. I opened an app, connecting to a live stream that broadcasts to viewers all over the world. I faced the camera and spoke with an excited tone. Now Steven is going to take the Extra Spicy Stew Challenge. Steven has many friends, so he has a huge number of followers. In no time, there was a flood of viewers, all eagerly waiting to watch Steven eat. "What are you doing?" "Look, everyone's waiting. We gotta make this video exciting." His friends were delighted, giving him tons of likes. Among those who commented, Lisa was there too. "If you quit midway, your friends will be disappointed." Reluctantly, Steven took a bite of the super spicy stew. "Stop it. You won't get away with this. It seems like your usual harsh words just got exposed to all your friends." Steven seemed at a loss for words, but the spiciness of the stew was apparently overwhelming. "Give me water. I have some sweet carrot juice if you want." On the screen, my hand holding a glass is shown. I deliberately placed the glass slowly near Steven's hand. Steven, seemingly unable to wait, gulped down the juice. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed throughout the neighborhood. "This is hot. This isn't carrot juice. What did you put in it?" "Oh, you noticed? It has the same sauce as the stew, but it definitely has carrots in it. Carrots have vitamins and beta-carotene. I don't care about that right now. It's so spicy, help me. We have plenty more juice if you want a refill. Just give me water." That scene was a huge hit in the video. Aside from the numerous comments, there were friends personally messaging Steven. "Need some excitement in your life? This might be just the right amount." The video ended with Steven struggling to finish his stew. Worn out from eating, Steven was too drained to get mad and just laid down on the couch. I told Steven it was a hit, so what's the big deal, and then retreated to my room. It seems like the stew hit him hard. Stephen spent the entire night in the bathroom. The next morning, a haggard-looking Stephen appeared in the living room, looking somewhat remorseful. I quickly packed my stuff, started house hunting, and left the apartment. Stephen, unable to afford the rent on his own, reluctantly moved into a nearby old apartment and began a quiet life. Upon seeing Stephen's living situation, Lisa decided she didn't want to get married and chose to become a single mother at our parents' home. For Stephen, it seemed that Lisa running away was quite a shock. He probably realized that what Lisa had truly dreamed of wasn't marrying him, but leading a lavish and glamorous life. Of course, Lisa is relentlessly seeking child support. I started working at the hospital where Brittany works. It's reassuring and quite comfortable working alongside colleagues I get along with. As I became more settled in my job, I began introducing nutritious recipes beneficial during pregnancy at the hospital. They were very well received, and I earned a good reputation as a popular nutritionist in the local area. Drawing from my experiences and feedback from the pregnant women I met at the hospital, I've come up with several new recipes. It's a challenging job, but immensely rewarding. Of course, at the end of each recipe, I always include a note to avoid excessive spiciness.